So, what does Muse, the CIA, and the Russians all have in common?
I don't know, Bob. What?
MK Ultra. Yes, we're finally doing MK Ultra.
But are we really, though? Nah.
We are and we aren't. Pour yourself a cup of joe and sit back. Science and conspiracy talk. MK Ultra and mind control over coffee. When I first started doing research for this podcast, I went down the usual route of the MK Ultra, mind control, the CIA government experiments, and none of this is really debatable because it's all part of public record.
Right.
So there's not too much really to go off on a tangent on the history of it, because I'm sure most of you are well aware of the history of MK Ultra and mind control. So in researching this, I kind of went down a couple different rabbit holes, and so instead of focusing largely on MK Ultra and mind control, I thought it'd be interesting if we talked about, is mind control even possible? And then, so that brought me down one rabbit hole, and then another rabbit hole spawned off of that of free will. Do we have free will? If we do, then absolutely, I think mind control is possible. But if we don't have free will, then there is no mind control. There is no anything.
Sure. So there is the possibility that we have listeners who don't know of MK Ultra yet.
I guess.
I'm just talking about scientific possibilities here, Bob.
Yep.
Or shall I say conspiracy.
Conspiracy.
So just, a brief recap. Correct me if I'm wrong, but MK Ultra was a top secret CIA experimentation project where they tried to enact mind control on unwitting subjects using LSD.
Yes.
And they did it for about 20 years before the program was brought to light.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And this was all brought about because the U.S. government thought that the Russians, because this was at the height of the Cold War, that the Russians had already cracked the mind control puzzle. So they thought they were behind the eight ball on it, and they needed to have their own research and develop mind control as a weapon.
Right. Okay. And so just quickly, do you know what they had said to people to get them to take the LSD?
There was a lot of different things that they just kind of had trials, and the director of the CIA pretty much gave free rein to Sidney. I'm going to butcher his last name.
It's Gottlieb. It's a German name.
Yeah, Gottlieb.
Yeah, which it means God love of God, actually. Gottlieb.
Some people would say that's debatable in this case. But,
yeah, right? Yeah.
But
so
Sidney,
there were several trials.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
And even in Canada.
Okay. And we say trials here, we don't mean a court trial. We mean an experiment, a scientific trial. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Sidney had pretty much free reign over the testing on the subjects. If they died, just mark it up as a failed experiment, and let's move on to the next one. And this went on for 20 years, you said.
Yeah. So, if you folks want to know more about it, we're definitely happy to dive more into MK Ultra. But it did, as Bob said, as conspiracy said, bring up the notion of free will, because do we actually have that capacity to be controlled? If we don't have free will, can we be controlled?
Exactly. And that's the big rabbit hole that I jumped off into and dove into.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so go for it.
Well, I guess we should start off talking about what is free will. And the different philosophies kind of surrounding it, the determinism and fatalism. So fatalism means when something is, your outcome is set. So at some point you're going to die, but there's different paths that you can take to get to that point. Where determinism, your every move, every step is predetermined to get to that end point.
Okay. So let me just back up for a second.
Yep.
Because there's definitely the determinism and the fatalism, but it's not as clear cut as there's either A, determinism, B, fatalism, or C, free will. Because this is what people have devoted decades of their life to studying
Yeah, absolutely.
in philosophy. Okay.
Yeah,
So
this is no easy answer.
yeah. So we don't want people to come at us and go, well, it's not that simple. We do definitely recognize that there's a lot to unpack here about determinism, fatalism, which is also a Muse song, interestingly
Yes.
enough. Yes. So if you guys haven't listened to Muse, definitely go check them out, especially in the pre-2010s. They've kind of lost me after that. But anyway, that's another topic.
podcast.
Yeah,
Another podcast.
that's another podcast. We're not here to talk about our musical preferences. But I mean, so certainly, yes, you're right in talking about the loose categorization of determinism versus fatalism there. So, the fatalism, it's interesting because a lot of times when I hear the reference to fatalism, it's called theological fatalism. Have you heard that phrase?
Yes.
Do you know what it means?
Well, elaborate. You got it right there. So give us the definition.
Well, because theological, okay, so for people who don't know, theological means when it happens to be pertaining to religion. Okay, so theology, religion. Okay, so we'll just unpack the definitions here for a second. Okay, so then when you get to talking about theological fatalism, it's essentially, it's a very hard, they call it like a hard form of theological determinism. And so what this really means is, yes, absolutely everything is dictated to the point.
Yes.
So what you're talking about, fatalism and determinism, so strong, hard theological determinism is actually fatalism. Everything that ever has been and ever will be is predestined. Absolutely every tiny little choice that we make is predestined by a God.
You had me up to that point.
Well, that's where the theological part comes in.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So everything is predestined by God. That's theological fatalism or theological determinism.
Okay.
And then, so if you were to kind of soften that stance to just be like determinism, then it means like God knows everything that's going to happen, but how you get there and the choices that you make to take that path are kind of yours.
Right. And I don't see how that can happen, because it kind of goes back. It also brings in the nature and nurture perspective, because every decision that you make is based on other decisions that you made in the past. But you've made those decisions based on other decisions, and it goes all the way back, because if you didn't do something at a certain time, you wouldn't have come in contact with somebody. And everything leading up to that one point on both sides, your side and the person that you interacted with, there was 100 trillion different decisions that had to have been made. But the only way that you could make those decisions is based on experience. So if you extrapolate and go all the way back right from the Big Bang, or everything is determined because there's only been one choice that you can make. It's based off of all your experiences that came before it. So you only had, it may look like you can go left or right, but you only had that one choice to go left. You'll always go left. You would never go right because for whatever reason.
Okay, so I mean, touching on the nature nurture thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's been very well established now in science, right? That we are more than just our genetics.
Right.
We are also our experiences.
Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm saying. All these experiences lead you to every single decision that you make. You can only make that one decision. And whether it's something small as like scratching your nose because you know how far you can let your nose go before you need scratching, all the way up to like buying a car or making a choice, walking out in front of traffic or not. Like every little decision like that, I think, plays into every little decision.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's no question that we are a series of our choices.
But I think
Or is there? I guess
Yeah.
I shouldn't say there's no question because this is
Yeah.
exactly what we're debating, right? I guess there is a question, but I mean, we've talked about how people who have tried to overcome their genetics, for example, to become the authors of their own destiny, right? So the challenge that's being posed by neuroscience and those who debate free will is, do we actually think that we could have control over something as complex as our brains when we still don't even fully understand them? You know, and I heard something a little while ago that, you know, people always say we only use 10% of our brain. It's a misnomer to say that. We use all of it, but we don't use it to its fullest potential.
Right.
Because the brain is fairly well mapped out. Obviously, not every little neuron and every little axon, but you know, it's fairly well mapped out now. It's just that we don't know the depths of the levels that we could go to with each section of the brain. But anyway, I digress. So like one of the challenges that's being posed to this when we're talking about nature, nurture, how much can we actually control our brains? Because can we control our biology to the extent that we can tell our brains to think, that we can tell our brains to rewire, any more that we can tell our heart to beat, right? That was actually, it was a really good quote that, I read an article, it was either Scientific American or The Atlantic. It was one of the two, because they both had really great articles on free will, but that I've read. But, you know, my answer is no, we can't, right?
Right.
Now, there's been work in neurology doing biofeedback. But you still, some people can't even master biofeedback. You know, and some people posit biofeedback as a way of calming yourself when you're prone to PTSD or panic attacks.
But then that goes back to, why are you prone to PSD and panic attacks?
Yeah.
Because what led you to that point that triggers you for a panic attack and triggers the PTSD?
Yeah. And another interesting challenge to all that is, like, what makes you prone to it? What makes you not prone to it? And I read this again in one of those two articles. They talked about, you know, for people who end up becoming serial killers.
The serial killer gene.
Yeah, we know that doesn't exist. But are we to say that we have no control over those choices? If you are, you know, genetically predisposed for whatever reason, are we actually, oh my God, I can't even say a phrase without questioning it now, because are we actually genetically predisposed to anything? Can we, if our parents were alcoholic murderers, you know, nature and nurture would both say we may become alcoholic murderers because that's the environment we grew up in, and from our parents, our genetics would dictate it. But what about the people who don't become alcoholic murderers? Is it because they have free will to not make the same choices that their parents made? And this is what the legal system predicates upon, like all that we have free will to make these choices. But I saw that court cases are starting to embrace determinism.
Oh, wow.
More and more. And it's very, very, very dangerous, because if you say, well, no, that's my genetics, do you get off on being a murderer? Yeah. So, you know, the number of court cases that are using evidence from neuroscience has more than doubled in the last decade, they say, with defendants arguing that their brains have made them do it.
And they have no control over what their brains are telling them to do.
Right. And so, I mean, because we can't. We talk about rewiring our brains, neuroplasticity. We can definitely do things that we can hope will stave off dementia, for example. Use our brains better for longer. But we can't tell our brains what to do. We can reframe how we think for certain things. We can reframe automatic thoughts, but can we really go to that extent?
And this kind of brings it back to MK Ultra and mind control. Are we able to manipulate our brains? Can someone else manipulate our brains? Not necessarily ourselves, just trying to learn how to relax better, but can someone? Sorry, I hit that. Can someone tell you and program you to do things that you otherwise wouldn't be able to do? But then it goes back to, our brains have been wired for millions of years, right from the beginning, all the way through evolution and to this point. So we've had like hundreds of thousands of years as humans, as Homo sapiens, wired to be a certain way.
Yeah.
And I think if free will does exist, trying to rewire our brain within a matter of a couple of months or years is I think it's foolish when we've had hundreds of thousands of years to wire our brain a certain way.
Yeah.
How can we rewire it in a couple of years, or even like over decades? Like this experiment is just a blip.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, if that were the case too, we've had decades and hundreds of years now dealing with mental illness. People seek treatment because schizophrenia is ruining their lives, or even like people with, Tourette's, right?
Yep.
If rewiring your brain and controlling your own brain were that easy, then these people wouldn't have these struggles.
Right.
However, then I do bring up the other scientific side of it, is that, well, that's what the pharmaceuticals are doing in a way. It's alleviating some of the symptoms, but it's still only alleviating symptoms. Although, oh no, see, here I go again, right?
Right.
So you're schizophrenic, right? You take medication for it. Maybe you have less persecutory delusions, but then maybe you have other, lucid dreams or other nightmares. Like, who knows? You still dream wild things, even if you're on these drugs.
Right.
We dream wild things when we're drunk, like, so I don't know if it's free will or not.
But your body makeup, your chemical makeup is determined. You have no control over that. Your parents do. So
But your
everything.
parents don't either, really.
No, no,
Right?
right, exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm just going back like one step,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
because this is in this theory you can go back right to the very beginning and predict everything.
Yeah. Okay.
So just by going back one step, you're a product of your parents' genetics. So that's part of your evolution of yourself. So if you're going to develop schizophrenia or other mental illness or other birth defect or nothing, it's that when you're born, you're going to be living your life a certain way based off of society, your parents, like, and that's where the nature nurture part comes in. And so when you get to that point of taking LSD, if you're part of this MK Ultra experiment, you had no choice. You were going to do it no matter what. And you're going to either fall into an LSD trip that takes you in different directions, or it doesn't bother you.
But wait, are you saying that the people who joined the MK Ultra experiments were predestined to do so?
Yes.
So then you do believe in determinism,
Yes.
but not theological.
Not theological, because I don't think there's an all-reaching God. I have nothing against religion, just throwing that out there. Believe what you want, but I don't believe that there's one over-controlling being.
So, okay, but if you don't believe, yeah, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't believe in free will,
Mm-hmm.
then why do people try to better themselves?
Mm-hmm.
Why do people try to develop careers, be creative, have challenges in life that they try to conquer? Why do they love? Why do we learn from our mistakes?
Well, these are all great questions, and it's just the illusion of free will, because by learning from your mistakes, if you didn't make the mistakes in the first place, you wouldn't have the motivation to learn from those mistakes. And if you're predetermined to open your own business, you just don't always, there's steps leading up to it. And if you didn't take those steps, you wouldn't be where you are today.
Okay, so you said
Yep.
that, okay, we are doing this podcast on free will today.
Mm-hmm.
You said that you made the decision to not go into the MK Ultra thing as much and to talk about free will. So you said that was your choice, your decision.
But it's only partly it's not even my decision, it's my illusion of my decision. Because this was the only way that this podcast could have happened tonight.
Okay. So, okay. I guess then, have you ever heard of Schopenhauer?
No.
Okay. So, philosopher.
Yep.
And thought that even like the whole world that we see and experience is a representation in the mind.
Okay.
So is that where you're going? Is that what you think it is? Do you think that everything is just an illusion? Everything? Like, are we living in the Matrix?
That's a whole other podcast. And but essentially, whether or not we live in a matrix, computer simulation, this is our reality. And if it happens to be ones and zeros, then that's what our makeup is. And that's who we are as a people. I don't think we're like a video game that you play a character and you have to get to the boss to move on to the next level, and how you get there is up to you to beat bad guys in a certain way or jump on the turtles if you're playing Mario or something like that.
So you've watched Free Guy. We just watched Free Guy, people, and no spoilers, but you gotta check that movie out with Ryan Reynolds. It was so good.
So
Yep.
let's just bring it back again to mind control and MK Ultra, because that's essentially the topic that we're supposed to be talking about. What makes someone more susceptible to so-called mind control than other people? And then we kind of touched on that before, but I just wanted to kind of bring it back to the mind control aspect of it. Are some people more susceptible to suggestion? And it kind of goes into marketing and advertising and the power of persuasion of the way people or the way companies sell a product, and in a way that is in a sense kind of mind control. So people who buy into all these big brands and advertising, is that, would they be more susceptible to an MK Ultra mind control Manchurian candidate type of scenario?
Well, I don't know because like I think we really we're stretching things a lot here because we've barely touched on the notion of free will in like this 20 minutes or whatever we're talking.
Yeah.
You know, if we don't believe ourselves to be free agents, there's no motivation in life. If we actually believed that free will is an illusion, then yeah, then I think we would be susceptible to so-called mind control.
Right.
Because you don't think you have control over your life anyway. So whether it be a omniscient deity or a guy at the CIA,
Right.
who's to say? We can give control to one guy one week and one guy the next week. Whoever can control it better, whoever's stronger and more powerful. But like, I don't know, do people really ever believe that free will is an illusion?
Well, I think of the choices that we make is the illusion of free will, because like what I was trying to get at before, every decision that we've made has kind of led us to the next decision. And that's the only decision that we could have made based on every other decision and our interactions with people, with animals, with the weather, with everything. Every little thing determines your outcome. So, and will determine future outcomes and future decisions. So we may think that we're trying to better ourselves, but it's already been predetermined that at some point in your life, you're not happy with the way things are going and you want to better yourself, or
Who's determining that?
there's no one person determining it. It's like this force of nature that's determining
How?
it,
How is it chosen?
based off of other choices from other people.
So you never have a say in anything.
I don't think you do.
So you're a very kind and considerate person. But if you ever said anything to hurt my feelings by accident, would you apologize?
Well, I would apologize, because
Because if you believe free will is an illusion, you take no blame for anything.
no, but this is where some of this really obviously we're scratching the surface here. But what I'm trying to get at is that there is that illusion that choices that you make are your choices, and if you mess up, you apologize and you learn from your mistakes. But what no, just wait, no. In our mind, we are such small creatures that our little brains, our 100,000-year brains of humanity, cannot see past like a certain point of view and a certain perspective. So what I'm trying to get at is we have the illusion that we are moving forward and we love and we experience joy and happiness and anger and fear. But all those, to different degrees that we feel these emotions and we act on certain things, is based off of actions and experiences that we've already gone through, and our interactions with other people, the experiences that they've gone through their life.
But if you're saying that there's no free will,
Mm-hmm.
then what do you say when our daughter comes to you and says, I don't know what to do. I'm having this moral dilemma.
Mm-hmm.
What should I do? What are you going to say? Doesn't matter because it's already been decided for you.
No, of course not.
Eh.
Because that it's whatever choice I say, I don't know what the outcome's going to be, or we would all be millionaires winning the lottery.
Not that you know, that somebody else knows, that somebody else has it all predetermined.
I don't think anybody. There's no timekeepers, or I don't think there's anybody out there. There's not a secret organization, and this is coming from me, conspiracy. There's no secret organization that's outside of this pulling the strings. I think there's government agencies and private corporations that are pulling the strings on other things, but that's all been determined too. But what I'm trying to get at is we don't know what's coming. So every choice that we think we're making, it's the only choice that we can make, but we are making it based off of our experiences. And it's genuine. Because we don't know, I can't see 5 minutes into the future.
You just contradicted yourself, though, by saying it's genuine.
Well, it's genuine as we don't know. We can't see beyond our linear time space. So it comes off as being absolutely genuine, because if I could, the only way it went is if you could see 5 minutes into the future and know how you got there.
I don't like this because I want to believe that I make my own choices.
You do make your own choices to a point.
This is just insulting.
No, you make your own choices based off of
something somebody's already decided for me.
No, nobody's decided.
Actually, no.
No, there's no one person deciding.
I know. But actually, it's interesting, though, because, I mean, without talking about illusions,
Mm-hmm.
you're kind of addressing kind of how the Buddhists look at it, because the Buddhists actually accept both freedom of agency and determinism to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's like we have human agency to get better and grow and move forward in our lives, but without the total agency from everyone else. Do you know what I mean? Like we're all kind of interconnected, and it's a bit more spiritual in that way, without being like that mono deity that I was talking about.
Right, and to some degree, I can get on board with that. But what I'm saying is, like, we can better ourselves, because it doesn't always have to be this dark and gloomy thing of let's just give up because we're not just that we don't have free will, so let's just give up. It's part of who we are as a people. The experiences have to be in a positive certain way for us to even consider bettering ourselves. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I mean, I think you are painting it a bit more bleak than some people look at it. And there's actually some evidence to back you up. Like there's been psychology studies in the last 20 years where they've looked at the notion of free will. And when people, if they assess that the participants in the studies really don't believe in free will, or rather they believe free will is an illusion, such as yourself believing that free will is an illusion, there's less creativity, less joy, and feeling blameless for stuff.
But what I'm saying though
It's
is
very deep, dark and bleak.
But I didn't even think of the dark and bleak perspective of this when I was going down these rabbit holes, because I'm thinking it as just being. These are the choices based off of, and maybe it's a personal thing. Maybe if you grew up in an abusive household and you got beat down at school and then later at work and then maybe you would have more of a darker outlook to it. But I see it as an opportunity based off of all our previous choices. Not like the choices that were presented to us are the only choices that we could have made and the only choices that we're going to be able to make in the future. But I don't see it as a bleak, dark thing.
Yeah, because that's very dark. And you're just talking about people who lived in an abusive household and whatnot. Then that means they're predestined to be abused, and that they made choices that left them in that situation, and that's blaming the victim. You weren't prepared for that, were you?
But it's not. But then it still goes back to the choices that they make. How do I say this? Because I know I'm not coming across the way that I want to come across.
People are gonna take sound bites. This is the problem with doing a podcast, is people are gonna be like, "What? No, he just said that," and then that's what it's gonna be. People glom onto.
Well, let's wrap it up for today then, because we're not getting anywhere.
So, I think we all feel kind of helpless with what's been going on in life lately, with COVID and war and everything. Like, I don't think we should leave this on a bleak note that everything is predestined.
But it's not a bad thing. It doesn't always have to be a bad thing.
It doesn't have to be a bad thing. But if you're not leaving room for human agency, then that implies that people are at fault.
We are at fault. Like, people are inherently faulty. We make these good and bad choices based off of.
Although I guess no, because I'm actually taking it to the other extreme. Because I'm going to backtrack on what I said there. Because we're talking about, if free will is an illusion, then people are blameless.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's what I said earlier. I was asking you if that's what that meant. If free will is an illusion, does that mean people are blameless? But it doesn't necessarily mean that, even if that were to exist, it doesn't mean that it's blame the victim, because, again, they can't be held responsible for their choices if everything is predetermined. And this is why we don't have PhDs in philosophy.
We have a PhD in horribleness. Comment in the comments where that's from, and you'll win a prize.
If we can get some comments on that, that would be awesome.
Let's end it there, because we could go on for another 8 hours. We could create a whole podcast about free will.
Yeah, and there are philosophy podcasts out there. So what I would like, if I can make that choice and have some free will, I would actually like to see us take this back more to MK Ultra and mind control. Now that we've kind of debated free will a little bit, it might be neat actually to bring it back to MK Ultra. Maybe not necessarily for the next one. Maybe we need to give this a little bit of a downtime to marinate. But let's still do that. Let's still visit MK Ultra.
Yeah, because there's lots of interesting tidbits in the MK Ultra.
Yeah, and there's also some cool science behind it. So, yeah. So, what do you think, folks? What do you think? Do you think that you have free will? Do you think that you have agency to make your own choices? Does anybody really want to believe that they don't? Does anybody want to believe that they're a puppet in the universe's grand
scheme.
marionette theater?
But then that still implies that there's some controlling.
The universe, I said. The universe's grand marionette theater. I don't know.
Not the bushes.
No.
We'll get there.
We'll go there. We'll go there another day.
So everyone, that's it for today. And remember, being paranoid is smart. See you next time.
Bye-bye.
If you like the episode, don't forget to subscribe. You can download us on any of the major podcasting platforms. This week's episode of Science vs. Conspiracy Over Coffee was produced by Lethologica. Writing and research was done by Bob Homer and Jennifer Timer.